Hi folks, False Prelate here, and this is my Titan Quest 2 Early Access review. I just finished playing the Titan Quest Early Access. It took me about 7 hours and 13 minutes or so. I do have another video that shows my whole, or not my whole playthrough, but the vast majority of my playthrough, and I'll link that in the description below. But for this video, we're just going to do a review of what I thought of the Early Access. Let's start off with classes. So, Titan Quest 2 has a flexible mastery system, lets you take two masteries and combine them together to kind of make your own custom class. And this is the same way it was back in Titan Quest 1, and that is probably one of like the hallmarks of that game that made it kind of like unique. And really loved that game, and I like how it's implemented here as well. And there's also kind of another system built around that, which is like an attribute system where each attribute kind of gives two other attributes that are like adjacent to it, and those will let you kind of customize your scaling and the scaling of what type of damage that you deal as well. So each mastery has active skills and passives, and the active skills have their own little mini trees inside of them, and as you put points into each active skill, you can change that skill in some sort of way. So like for example in Path of Exile, you have a skill, you socket it with support gems, and then you can get extra projectiles and things like that. Same kind of deal, it's just in the skill on the like user interface there itself rather than being in your gear. So for example, in the game I played a rogue and a warfare hybrid, and the rogue, one of the active abilities is like a kind of a throwing star, like a throwing dagger, and it has like 100% pierce chance. And I decided to go bleed, so I had like increased ailment chance. I had one that like you hit and then it has a chance to bleed every couple of seconds. And then there's like some more like generic ones, like generic more damage increases and things like that. But if I wanted to play it a different way, I could. There's one that made the skill turn into a spell instead of an attack. There is one, there's some like poison support in there. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that you could play it. So depending on how you wanted to play that skill in that class, you could make it kind of your own. So that was pretty cool. Another big pro is I think it's accessible for new players. Respecking is pretty cheap. You just go into each skill and then like unspec things that you don't want. It costs like a very small amount of gold, and gold is pretty plentiful once you get into the game. Even respecking attributes isn't even that bad. You can just go into the town, and then there's like an altar that lets you respec all your attributes, and that's a little bit more expensive for sure, but it's still not that crazy. Currently, we're just limited to the Rogue, Warlord, Storm, and Earth Masteries, but back in Titan Quest 1, there was like a lot more options, and as they added on the mini expansions like Atlantis and I think Ragnarok was another one, they added in more and more classes. So, for example, in Immortal Throne, I think it was, they added in Dream Mastery. The base game came with things like defense, nature, so like there's like a bunch of different types of playstyles that aren't in the game yet, but probably will be in the game, so I expect that will be coming in the future. Okay, now let's talk about world, art style, and graphics. So the art style is reminiscent of the old game. I think it beautifully captures ancient Greece. The old game had a lot of different locales. You had like, Egypt, parts of Asia, Norse lands, Atlantis, in the Embers one, they had like inside of hell, basically. Yeah, there's a lot of different settings that I expect will be added. Right now, it's just limited to Greece. But what they have done is they've made the soundtrack really make you feel like you're in that place. Like you're listening, and there's like the Greek guitar strumming and the person singing in the background, and it all just kind of comes together, and you do feel like that Greek feel. One big pro for me is that everything is handcrafted. There are no procedurally generated zones yet. And this is how it was in the first game too, where you'd go in, the map is always the same, and it's crafted with care. And I feel like that is actually a draw. There's so much more intention with it being handcrafted. One con for me is that I found some textures kind of appeared a bit muddy. Now I'm using a 4070 Ti Super, so there's really no excuse for things appearing muddy, because that's like a decently high level card. It's not like, top of the line or anything like that, but definitely shouldn't be seeing things get like blurry with that kind of card. However, I feel like I can't be too hard on them, because I feel like this is an issue with DLSS, and actually in Path of Exile 2, I often have this problem as well, where times where there's lots of combat, things kind of get muddied up and like blurry. So I was definitely experiencing that in Titan Quest 2, and I feel like maybe that's an NVIDIA or a DLSS problem. I'm not sure. I would love to know in the comments, is there anybody who played it on an AMD? Did you have the same issues, or is this an NVIDIA thing? I did hear other people who have NVIDIA have similar reports on this, so I don't think it's just my card. I think it's potentially an NVIDIA issue. Let's move on to skills in combat. So hit collision felt pretty good on most skills. Again, I was playing like a throwing dagger, so it had 100% pierce. I'd throw it through the pack, it would hit like the whole pack in the line, and it felt very chunky, felt good. There was a time where I was playing a two-hander build, and you would sweep it, it would hit like all the enemies, and you could feel it, like it felt good. I did have some problem with my character sliding around in like certain situations, generally when there was like allies in the way. So for example, Aristino is a character that follows you around for the beginning of the game, and like you try to kill mud crabs, and then like you would target one, and then if she walked out in front of you, it would slide you around her. It was like kind of awkward. I felt the same thing happening in a couple of different parts in the game where allies would come in and then you would slide around them. So there's a little bit of weirdness there with that, with pathing. I think one big pro is the way that the monster packs are kind of set up. So the monster packs have this diversity. There's a built-in focus system as well that helps you focus down more dangerous packs. So for example, with the Ichthyans, there's like a bunch of small melee guys that come out and try to hit you, some like rangers. There's a caster usually in the pack that fires some like nets and things at you, try to like lock you down. And then there's like a bigger one that kind of hits in a big slam in front of you, and then you kind of have to like kite them around and like focus down the caster so you don't get rooted, so you don't get hit by the brute or whatever. And I felt like that was pretty cool. But then the in-game focus system does a really good job of showing you like what monster is firing what spell. So like there'll be a spell indicator on the ground, and then when that happens, a dot will appear above the head of an enemy so that you know who actually put down that ability. And that's really cool because that helps players identify like, oh, that's that thing that's trying to hit me with that spell. I should kill that really quickly. One con for me was that it was difficult to sustain energy early. Kind of does force you to use potions often and auto attack often. Auto attack doesn't feel particularly good right now in the current state, and it's weird because there is a system that allows you to put points and invest into your auto attack, but I felt like it never really felt very good. It just felt like it was doing significantly lower damage than everything else, and it didn't really have much synergy with the other skills that I was using. But maybe that was just my build, I don't know. Could also be just a factor of being in the beginning of the game where it's hard to get energy gear. You guys have limited skill uses, and some other games are like that too at the beginning, and then that kind of solves itself over the course of the game. There's a nice variety of skills for the limited 4 classes with the level 20 mastery cap. In Titan Quest 1, there was like multiple levels or tiers of abilities available, and we only had the bottom 3 tiers available in this early access. So if I'm like thinking back to the old game, like all the coolest skills were in like the top 2 or 3 rows. So I do expect, even though it seems like a lot of the skills are pretty simple that are in the game right now, that was also true of the skills in the first like 3 kind of categories in the old game, and you didn't get like the really crazy cool ones until you like unlock further up the mastery, and that kind of gave you an incentive to invest more into like one mastery versus another. So I don't think this is necessarily a downside. I think it's just a result of only having up to like level 20 skills. Moving on to bosses, I thought each boss was kind of like unique. They had their own skills, their own play styles. You had to kind of memorize the different parts of the fight, and I thought that they were really well telegraphed. Like all the damaging abilities that were on the ground, it was easy to see them. You could like memorize a fight and then like learn it and not get hit by those abilities, and I felt like they're pretty decently easy to dodge. Also, you can improve your dodge roll in the mastery screen, and you can add things like dodge roll charges, dodge distance. So that is also really nice too. If your build needs that little extra push to get out of the way, you can kind of invest in it. As for the bosses themselves, I felt like Pan stood out as a clear winner. Pan's voice acting was very good. The storyline was really cool, like leading up to it. Just like that whole arena, the way it was crafted and his abilities, like it was all just really, really good. Although I will say the voice acting experience throughout the rest of the game was pretty hit or miss. Some parts were good, some parts could definitely use some improvement. Another huge W for me is that you can farm bosses for loot, like D2 style, but you can do it in-game instead of having to like go out and like reset your whole client like you do in the old games. You can just like go up to an altar, pay a small amount of gold, and it will respawn that boss right there, and you can just like kill it on repeat. And you can also go to an altar and increase the difficulty as well for better loot. And I did that for a bit, farmed it out, and had fun killing Pan over again, the Hippocampus over and over again. Now, there's only a couple of bosses in the game, so it's like, you know, not that much variety. But I got some really good loot and had some fun killing those bosses on like harder and harder difficulties. Another big W for me is access to boss arenas. So when you go up to kill a boss, especially the ones that you can like re-kill, there's always waypoints, like a very short walk away from them. And then if you do happen to die, this game actually has a system where you can teleport to your body on resurrection. So you go back to town, and then you can just use the portal to go back to where you died, and then there's no like walking back to your corpse or anything like that. So that also is really nice, helps you save time. Okay, as for the story, I thought the story was cool. They have this like thread of Nemesis tying everything together. So Nemesis is kind of like the big bad guy, or at least for Act 1. And you're trying to like chase her down / evade her at different points. And the story kind of all focuses around that. The plot does make references to the previous game. So like, for example, the Titans and creating the world, and like Icarus and things like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. One con for me around the story is it's easy to accidentally miss side quests. Some of them are kind of poked away. You know, some games have a system where you go to town, you pick up like all the quests in town, and then you don't really miss any. But in this one, like you could actually just walk by it off of like a tiny little side area and not see it, and then maybe you miss like a skill point or something like that. So one thing I would suggest, if there's a developer listening, is to add some sort of indicator showing if you've collected all the skill points in the area. That way you don't accidentally miss a skill point that you had to get through a side quest. Because again, some of them are pretty tucked away, which is fine. I like the exploration, but especially if there's like a skill point attached to it, it probably should show up. Right now, only Act 1 is present. I'm not going to fault them for that. It's early access. More is to come. Another thing, there's no decisions to be made. You're kind of just following a linear storyline. Now, some people could see this as a con, and I definitely understand if you think that way. But personally for me, like Titan Quest was always a linear storyline. You just follow the story, and then you play it out, and like you get to the end of it, and then that's the end or whatever. So for me, that's not an issue. Also, there's kind of this like thread of storytelling throughout, which is that you're going up about a prophecy. And there's like the three sisters who have like the strings of like, you know, your life, and so that ties in there as well. So it kind of makes sense that the storyline is linear and you're following a storyline rather than like, you know, making choices. But if you're, you know, a Baldur's Gate lover, you're not going to find that kind of thing here. And that brings us lastly to value and rating. So for me, $24 is a complete steal, especially if you plan on playing the game on release, buying the full game. This is the cheapest it'll probably be. You should buy it now if that's your goal, because it won't get cheaper than this, right? Well, not for a very long time. However, if your plan is to just buy the game and play only the content that's available right now, I don't think it's worth $24. As I said, there's about 7 hours of content per, like, I guess, character or class that you create. It took me about a little over 7 hours to get through the game and complete all the side quests on one character. If I guess you could stretch it out and make it like, you know, 14 or 21, depending on how many characters you create. There's only so many classes that are available right now to like play around with. As for rating, right now I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I think it's an excellent game that has great potential. I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product for sure. Anyway, that's it for the review. If you liked the review, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and tell me what you thought in the comments below. And if you played the Titan Quest Early Access, let me know. Did you like the Early Access? What parts of it did you like? What things do you think should be improved? Be sure to give the devs some feedback. Anyway, peace out, and have a great one.